It's exactly 4 after 12 o'clock, and next on the show, we're going to be talking WhatsApp and the new privacy policy. We have a gorgeous young lady. Her name is Amara Hussein. And the reason I have her here on the show this morning is we were together a couple of weeks ago, and the subject of this issue came up, the whole issue around WhatsApp and the privacy policy, obviously. And for the first time since this started doing the rounds, I heard somebody talking to me and making some sense. And I was so amazed and so taken aback by this very young, gorgeous lady having so much of knowledge on this issue. And I said, please, you have to come and share this information with our listeners. So, Amara Hussein, Assalamu alaikum, welcome to the program. What a pleasure to have you here today.
Wa alaikum salam. Jazakallah for having me.
Okay, now before we talk about WhatsApp, I just absolutely have to share this information. This young lady has just passed matric, and she has passed matric with 8 distinctions. Not one.
Four.
Is it 4? Okay,
Yeah,
4 distinctions. Not 1, not 2, but 4 distinctions. Congratulations. Many congratulations. I think your parents and the rest of the family are truly proud of you. How did you swing it? I mean, I'm just trying to think about the extremely difficult conditions we were living under. We're still living under, obviously, with COVID and lockdown. What is it that you did that worked for you to go out and gain 4 distinctions?
I think a lot of hard work went into matric, and any matric would be able to say that a lot of hard work goes into a matric year, but especially being the first matric year to finish in such trying times with COVID and so much online learning, it was definitely challenging to try and adapt your learning style to the way we were now taught, because previously we had obviously had in-person lessons and all of that, and it was very tricky to now suddenly adapt to online lessons, and that was especially trying. But I think the best advice you could give anyone in a matric year is find what works for you and to just focus on what you want and what makes you happy, be it subject choices or your learning style. Yeah.
What did you miss most about being stuck at home with COVID regulations going around and having to do all of your work online? Because this seems to be the future or the ongoing reality for us for at least another year or 2.
Definitely. I think something that a lot of matrics would share that they missed out on was the social aspect of matric. Generally, matric has a good blend of social events and academic pressure. But unfortunately, the only thing we can say for our matric year is we had a lot of academic pressure.
Okay. You have now applied, and the very next big milestone in your life is going to happen, and that is uni. Where have you applied? What have you applied for? Have your results have only just come out, so I'm assuming you haven't heard from the universities just as yet.
Fortunately, universities have managed to get back to us.
Oh, great.
Yes, it's now just a matter of actually making that decision of what you want to study, and again, finding yourself and finding your passion. And it's a difficult decision, but it's only the first stepping stone to your adult life. So it's not as much pressure as everyone would like to imagine it being.
Oh, wow. Well said. I'm so impressed. Have you made the decision yet, or are you still kind of grappling with it and weighing the pros and the cons?
I think I'm still in the process of making the decision. My results were a shock to me, so I'm now
Why a shock?
I mean, I think just anxiously waiting for those results, you tend to doubt yourself a lot, and you're filled with, why did this happen? And this test didn't go as you thought it would be. So now coming back with those results, I'm in the very fortunate position of being able to make a decision of what I want to pursue in tertiary education. So I'm still grappling with the decision, but inshallah, it'll get easy.
Ameen. don't let it be a shock. Let it be a wonderfully pleasant bonus. I don't think it should have been a shock because from what I hear, I've been told that you're very, very hard worker, and I guess you probably were expecting that you're going to get a couple of distinctions.
Definitely, but I think at the end of the day, you can't be too sure, especially because previously you know the teachers behind the exam, and you're not just a number. You have a face to the paper. Now you're absolutely unknown. The paper goes in with no assumptions. You could be a student who's barely passing, and the marker doesn't know that. And it's very, very. We're fortunate that we have that because it eliminates that element of bias, and I think that's why naturally to any matric student, expecting something and expecting good results is a shock.
Okay. Please tell us, what are you thinking about? You know, the lines. What did you apply for, by the way?
I've applied for electrical engineering, a BSc with either a biological focus or a computer science focus, and I've applied for BCom law.
Okay, so can you share with us, what are you leaning towards? I know your dad's an engineer. I know that, I know your mom is a qualified podiatrist, but she's now in a totally different field. I know that she's also studied law and with a medical element to it. Just correct me there.
Yeah, so my mom works in a more legal aspect of a pharmaceutical company. So I've definitely taken after them a lot in that my areas of interest are aligned. But I think ultimately my final decision is based on my aptitude and my interests. And they've
Okay.
fully supported me with that, as has everyone in my family. And I'm very fortunate to have that support behind me. But I think I'm leaning more towards the sciences. I know
Okay.
I don't think law is for me, but it was an area of interest previously, and I needed to explore that.
Inshallah, and your parents and the extended family should be very, very proud of you. And your parents have done a marvelous job. Alhamdulillah, lots and lots of success for the future. Coming down to WhatsApp, what happens if you don't accept its new privacy policy? I think people are very nervous about this. A lot of people even changed, they started using other applications to start connecting up with people, but those came with added risks as well. So let's start right at the beginning. Should we be concerned? What is the worry all about?
I think the worry originated when WhatsApp users became wary that their information might be shared with WhatsApp's parent company, Facebook, and other subsidiaries.
So it wasn't happening in the past. I mean, I know I was talking to someone else a week or so ago on this very show about privacy rules. For example, if even open an account with one of the big chain stores, they share all of that data. In fact, they sell those lists. And knowing this, I'm kind of wondering, should we still be worried about this? Or is the next question all about what is it that WhatsApp can access? Is that the big worry here?
I think that's a very good point to raise because a lot of people sit back and listen to everyone's paranoia about the subject of what is WhatsApp going to access? Are they going to try and replicate my details? And ultimately, WhatsApp has guaranteed all their users that their messages and their calls are secured with end-to-end encryption. End-to-end encryption is something I can explain just now. It's just something that I'd like to share is through my research, I found that WhatsApp, the only information that they've declared that they will share is a user's status, which is the pictures that we put up on WhatsApp that disappears after 24 hours. A user's profile picture, which is the picture that we identify a user with, as well as their online status, whether they are online or whether they are not online. Aside from that, beyond that, our messages that I send to another person or I call another person, that is all secured with end-to-end encryption.
So the big question, I don't know what this is, but what is end-to-end encryption?
So encryption
I
is
see, yeah, we see this on our phones when we sending or receiving messages, and I kind of don't even give it a second thought. Is it important? What do I need to know about it?
I think it's exceptionally important because understanding their level of encryption allows us some comfort knowing that our information is actually a lot more secure than we think it might be.
Oh.
So end-to-end encryption is or encryption, the general umbrella term, is essentially a lock. And this lock requires a key, and the key in terms of digitally is a PIN. And this PIN, so the form of encryption that WhatsApp uses is a form of AES, which is an advanced encryption system. This means that they use 250-bit encryption. In easier terms, this means that a person would have to correctly guess 78 digits, which means that the possible permutations or possible combinations would be 2 to the power 256. That's a huge number, something that we can't
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
Yes, exactly. Even modern day computers, as technologically as advanced as we are currently, no computer on the face of the earth can crack that code in a realistic time frame. So I hold on to my belief that
so we are safe. Our information is safe. We don't need to stress.
Exactly. Unless you're a Russian spy and some of your deep dark secrets are part of your profile picture or your status, we are safe. Yes.
Great stuff. Okay, so why should we be seeing this as less of a big deal than others, for example?
I think with anything, any technological advancement at the time seems very overwhelming and scary. And the easiest way to grapple with this is to consider something like the internet. The internet is a very new concept for a lot of people, and a lot of us use the internet every day, but we have very little understanding of it and our protection when using the internet. When the internet first started, it was called Web 1.0, and most pages were simply read only. They were static and they didn't change. They didn't have user interaction. We would go onto a page, we would read the information and take that information in. This was all stopped when Web 2.0 developed, and this allowed for user interaction. Social media requires us as users to contribute content, and our details and our sharing allows other people to read what they want. So with the development of Web 2.0, we already saw that massive change. And I imagine at that time, people were intimidated at the idea that they should share stuff. Why should they have to voluntarily give up stuff? Currently, we're at a stage of Web 3.0, which is also known as the semantic web. At this stage, we're essentially asking our web browsers to interpret our thinking, to understand what we're saying. So naturally, that sounds very something that we can't grapple with. It's not something that was previously done. And in order to allow algorithms to interpret our thinking and our language, we have to give up certain information. For instance, our vernacular. A South African vernacular as opposed to a British vernacular would vary, but our web browser needs to interpret that whether we spell color with a U or spell color without a U, we ultimately mean the same thing. And that's a perfect example of the semantic web. I think the point I'm trying to reach is that data sharing extends far beyond WhatsApp. And we don't seem to be boycotting Safari or Google, and yet they are also using information to profile us and to allow marketers to send us relevant information as opposed to a whole bunch of information and having to sift through what's relevant and what's not relevant.
Okay, you've mentioned Safari, you've mentioned Google. What are the other options? Because we've got to be very wary on, the type of applications we're downloading and using, etc. There's also the issue around lots of fake news going around. There's also lots of pornography that and pedophiles, out there trying to trap young innocent children, young innocent and teens, for example. There's just a whole lot of stuff that is really very scary on the net. So what are other options, number one? And number two, as a young person yourself, where do you see social media going to, and where do you believe should be the cutoff point? Because we are sharing more and more and more about ourselves on social media. And then we kind of wonder and ask, but, how do marketers, for example, know so much about us? And you find that people are intruding into your space. But what we seem to forget is that we've given off all of this information very willingly. So your thoughts on all of that?
So for your first question was what options we have. So
other options,
in my opinion, a lot of people I've seen of the older generation, I assume, have jumped to Telegram and Signal. And
Right.
I have not researched those enough, because out of my social circle and people my age, most of us have remained on WhatsApp. I'm not sure if it's the fact that we're slightly more au fait with marketers and other companies accessing our information, or if it's just less paranoia than the elder generation. But I think ultimately jumping in a rash decision to Telegram or Signal, how can we be sure that they aren't doing the same thing and just aren't disclosing as much as WhatsApp is willing to disclose with us? So I think any person who voluntarily chooses to use those platforms should definitely go research into whether they are giving information forward and their level of policies. I'm not comfortable enough to disclose that information because I don't know enough about those apps. I don't use them. The second question you had was about social media and to what level we should share and what level should be our cutoff. I think I've always been quite a private person, and I tend to stay off social medias like Instagram, and I protect my privacy. And I know a lot of the elder generation do, and I've been mocked a lot by elder people. How are you an 18-year-old and you don't have Instagram? But I think for me, social media is a very difficult thing to have in your life constantly. It can result in very toxic situations, and it just makes you a lot more vulnerable. And so you have to make an informed decision before you put anything out there. Ask yourself, if the whole world saw me as this, would I be okay with this? And if you wouldn't, then ultimately you don't want to be putting that on social media, because once something is out there, you are out of control of where it spreads. So,
yeah. Oscar Wilde once said that there's going to come a time in life where every person is going to want their 15 minutes of fame. And I think in this day and age, it's exactly that is what is happening, because it seems that a lot of people, young and older people, are taking to all of these platforms and putting out so much of their personal information out there. And I kind of wonder, how sensible is it, or possibly even how dangerous is it? Because what you put out there could possibly follow you for the rest of your life. It could be very damaging.
Definitely. Once something is posted on a forum, a social platform, it's essentially out of your control. And anyone who wants to put that against your name can. There's a lot of digital laws that are still coming into place, and a lot of the laws have not been solidified yet to protect a person who wants to post those sort of things. So the question you ask, and I know at school level now in high school, a lot of the time your life orientation and your talks that you have are about digital safety and digital awareness. And the question that they always tell you to ask is, if this was printed onto a billboard with your name on it, would you be proud of it or would you shy away from it? And if you have any doubt and you would shy away from it, then ultimately you don't want that to be put out. So don't put it out.
Absolutely. I agree with you 101%. In closing, then, what can you share with us? And I'm so pleased to hear that you are so respectful of your own private space. It's very commendable. Not very many young people, kind of think that way. Everybody wants to be some sort of known, someone in the news. Oh, have you heard this, that, and the other about so and so and so and so? And doesn't she look good? And isn't she great? And stuff like that. And I guess the question to ask is it important? Is it important for people to know all that stuff about you?
I think that's a very subjective question because a lot of people rely on that kind of validation, and it's what drives them forward and gives them that buzz. A lot of people have actually proven through studies that social media and getting that like and getting that notification is a drug because it gives us that buzz of serotonin, which drives us and makes us happy. It's a short-lived happiness, and it comes down to this thing of instant gratification versus just waiting a little bit more and finding validation within yourself before relying on others to give you that sort of validation. But ultimately,
sorry, carry on.
Ultimately, it is a person's choice that if they do want to put it out, we aren't anyone to judge. It's their personal choice, and it comes down to what you're comfortable with sharing.
I'm wondering, Amara, I'm not active on social media at all for the very reasons that you have also outlined. I'm also pretty private, and I know you might be thinking she's private, but she's in the media space, but it's my work. But the point is, I'm wondering about slanderous comments and, cattiness and stuff playing out on these platforms. Do you find a lot of that is happening? I know you're not very active, but do you find people in your circles or back at school talk about these sort of things where they are shamed on social media, where very private, personal, dark secrets are shared on social media? And if that is happening, what sort of protection do you have against it?
I think it's definitely a huge problem. Cyberbullying is probably something that every student has experienced at some point in their high school, if not primary school career. And it's something that our parents are unfortunately not able to relate to. When you're on social media, when you're on a text message, saying something to a person is a lot easier than it is when you're face to face. To be mean to a person is a lot easier on a social media platform than it is face to face. And ultimately, there's no form of protection that you can guarantee because all you need is a person to have your number and they have a platform to get to you on. Where bullying back in the day was at school, when you came home, you could escape. Now your bully is with you constantly on your phone. It's definitely a very, very big issue that a lot of people face still. And I know a lot of schools have very, very stringent interventions to protect students who are vulnerable to cyberbullying. Ultimately, a lot of the time, victims of cyberbullying don't speak out because they don't feel as though their problems are valid and as though what they're experiencing is good enough to tell someone. So it is a huge issue, and I think as people, we should move towards being kinder rather than being mean on social media. Social media has a lot of benefits, and those should also be explored as much as the negative aspects of it exist. There's a lot of positive.
Undoubtedly, you have the legal eagles looking into this and will hopefully in the not too distant future put policies, rules and regulations in place for the perpetrators so that this type of bullying and naming and shaming and stuff like that will come to an end. Amara, it's been an absolute delight having you on the show this morning. You truly were a superstar. You've shared some very, very relevant information with us. Thank you indeed, and lots of duas for a very, very fulfilling career going ahead. Congratulations once again on your 4 distinctions, and we're going to be watching you closely.
Jazakallah so much.
My pleasure. That was Amara Hussein, just turned 18, passed matric with 4 distinctions, and sharing her thoughts with us on the whole issue around the WhatsApp, obviously, the terms and conditions around WhatsApp and the privacy policy. And she actually blew me away. An 18-year-old speaking with so much of depth and maturity. Her parents are truly, truly proud of her. 12:29 exactly. We'll go for a short ad break. And when we get back, we'll be talking to Jason Down about recovery. Is it possible? And in this day and age and in lockdown, what does recovery or the prospects of recovery look like?